Thanks everybody for coming. I don't need a microphone. Just wear the batteries out. Yeah, and Jim had a good idea. If anybody needs a fan, there's candidates brought lots of literature out there. Good fan. So the other girls are getting all the questions ready. I want to thank everybody for coming. We're going to start off with, I'm going to ask Pastor John Roberts to lead us in invocation, and we'll remain standing for the flag salute. John, do you want to start us off?
Bow your heads and rebuke your heart, please. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much, first of all, for this great country that we live in. We thank you for those who have put themselves in harm's way to keep us free, and we would remember them tonight. Thank you for our local leaders who come to serve in whatever capacity that they see fit and feel compelled and qualified to do. And so, Father, we just thank you most of all that we have the kind of place that we can come together to gain understanding and wisdom as we select and continue to do our civic duty here in this community and across the state. We ask now your blessing on these proceedings and upon the time later on. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Let's do the hats off, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Be seated. For those who don't know me, I'm Stan Christie, the chairman of the Ferry County Tea Party, but I didn't get elected to stand up here all night. We're going to turn that over to Jim Milner. And also, before we get going, I want to thank Lorna and Allison and Jim and everybody else on this forum committee for they've been working hard, and all the ladies that brought goodies and treats and cookies for me, and I'll share them with you too. And we've been screening some of the only questions we screened out to turn in were some of them if there's 5 of the same question, or if there were all the questions directed at one person, we want to make it fair and even for everybody. So all the questions look good. Now, Jim Milner, you want to take over?
Okay.
So we're good?
No.
Technical difficulties.
Sorry, we didn't have a chance to test this ahead of time because we weren't sure about the batteries lasting.
Turn on.
Good.
Don't shake it.
Is this working now?
It works now.
Oh,
Looks like he gets to do it then.
okay. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you. Sorry, I'm not used to these things. All right, our first candidates tonight will be ones for the state representatives. We have Joel Kritz and Shelley Shorten here.
On the hot seat.
Oh, and as they're coming up, I should mention we have one candidate that is running unopposed.
I think we're going to have to yell.
I think you just yell. Can you hear the back all right?
Yeah. Here, John. Okay.
Now, we're accepting donations for a new sound system for the Grange.
We have one candidate that's running unopposed that's here. That's Rachel Syracuse for assessor. We're not going to have her come up, but you know we encourage you. Oh, yeah. Okay, just a second. We encourage anybody that has questions to talk to her afterwards. We want everybody to be informed on all of the candidates they're voting for, whether they're running opposed or not. Who's the other candidate? Sorry.
Could you stand up so
yes.
I see you?
And you are
I'm Jean Brewer and I'm Ferry County Clerk.
Ferry County Clerk. Okay. Be sure to talk to her and ask her questions too. All right, the format that we're doing is we're going to give the candidates 2 minutes to answer the question. In this particular case, since they're not running against each other, we'll just let them answer we'll let them answer the question and move on. But in the ones where we have multiple ones running against each other, they'll each get 2 minutes to answer the question. The person that goes first will get a 1-minute chance to sort of redirect, because it's a little harder on the candidate that goes first. And then on the next question, we'll alternate to the next person going first and so on. We're trying to make this as even as possible. All right. Question number 1. We'll start with Joel. Oh, yeah. Can everybody see the name tags okay, or do I need to introduce candidates as they come up?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. All right. What plan do you have to get our natural resources like timber on the national forest open up for logging before large stands die from bug kill?
Well, it's too late, folks. There's large stands dying of bug kill right now. I think the most interesting thing I've heard in recent months is an effort to return the federal ground, in most cases, to state control. I think there's 7 states that have got legislation on it. It's not an unprecedented thing. Some people think it never happened. It happened back east many years ago. Most of the eastern states were predominantly federal. When the states were chartered, it was set up to revert to the state at some point, and they just never did it out west. I think the recent experiences that we've seen with federal agencies, I don't think there's even much point in working on them anymore, or working with them, or anything else. The Forest Service has demonstrated that it's completely incompetent and unable to do what it's supposed to do. There's good people in there, individuals, but the agency itself has decayed. And if you look at the numbers on state ground compared to federal ground, the state managed forests are about 100% more efficient and productive. So that was something that we're looking at legislation for this year and going to move forward on.
I should mention too, for the candidate's benefit, our timer is over here. She has a 30-second warning and a stop. So,
She's packing too.
Okay.
So I'll just tell you that I'm interested in the same thing. I think with the situation happening with Kinross and the fact that one federal agency has really led to the demise of full-scale exploration, really, allowed me to think the same thing. There are good people in the agency, but it's broke. And I think that there's a way that we can do this. And like Joel said, there is precedent for it. And I think of our local economies and the hardship that you guys are having. And it's just like a wet blanket on the local economy. And I don't think that's right. There's too much, thousands and thousands of acres that aren't private property. And so I think it makes sense. It makes sense from the state perspective. It makes sense from, funding local schools and infrastructure. And I think it could be a win-win. Is it going to be easy in this state? No. But, most good things aren't. But I think it's the right way to go.
All right, just one other question. And we'll have Shelley go first on this one. Will you sponsor a bill to have the federal government pay taxes to the county for federal land within the county that we're not receiving tax revenue from?
Sure. So basically, very good question. We do sort of get some payments from the federal government, not near enough, in the form of the PILT and secure rural schools. That we get a share of that revenue. But as you all know, living here, it doesn't go very far, and there's less of it because the Forest Service isn't making money anymore. So I think if we can't get the land in state hands, absolutely, we ought to move forward and see what we can do, because you're entitled to the money.
And I want to make it really clear we're not running against each other. I quit. I'm scared of her. I do have an opponent, Spokane attorney. I'm taking that seriously, and so I'm trying to go to all these. One example, Shelley mentioned about the money coming back for the schools, and you know, it's one of the bills that we got through this year, we were co-sponsors. What was happening was if say Ferry County got an extra $100,000, the state was taking $100,000 out of what they were supposed to be giving us. So there was absolutely no net gain for, you know, the lost revenue on state forest ground. So that was something we've been working on for 3 or 4 years, actually off and on for long before either of us were there. So, you know, it's gonna, I think it was $70,000 for Republic this year that they actually gotta hang on to. So huge issue. We've gotta have some productivity on federal ground.
Thank you.
There you go.
Next, we'll have the county commissioner candidates. Yes, we have 2 candidates for local offices that couldn't be here tonight because they're over on the west side lobbying for money for 911. So we've agreed to let them have a representative read a brief statement. Who was going to do the statement for Rosalie?
Does she have, you have the statement?
She was supposed to have a representative.
Where's the big cookie?
Yeah. All right. What's that?
Pardon?
We don't have a statement.
We don't have a statement.
Oh.
Yeah, and this is for a washing machine too. Wrong game show.
All right, then we'll just move along and go with the 2 that we do have.
Would you please introduce the candidates?
Yes, we have Leo Jenkins and Nathan Davis. And we're not going to have any long statements because we have far too many questions to get through.
Ferry County Commissioner?
What's that?
Ferry County Commissioner?
Yeah, I said that. All right, we'll start with Leo on this one. We'll have 2 minutes, and then after Nathan's done, you'll have another minute if you want to. Candidates that don't choose to use any more time, that's fine too. What will you do to balance the budget without diverting county road funds? Please be specific.
Well, at this point, I think that our number one priority should be expanding our tax base in the county, looking for ways to bring in new revenue into the system. We want to make a business-friendly atmosphere in Ferry County by offering potentially property tax breaks to businesses that want to come in here and show on record that they're hiring locals from Ferry County. I think that the county should be helping market tourism the way that the city is at the same proportion, because tourists come into our community, they spend money in our local businesses, that in turn creates local jobs. People with jobs, businesses doing well, that creates tax revenue, expands our tax base. We're able to fund all of our agencies, fix our roads more to the extent we want to without having to raise taxes. And you know, I think that no stone should be unturned when it comes to creating jobs for our kids so they can stay here and have the opportunity to live in Ferry County like we do and not have to move away to find a job. And you know, that's one of the reasons why I'm running. And you know, I think that we have plenty of opportunity here now with relatively cheap power compared to the rest of Washington State and fiber optic cable going across the width of the county, that there's a lot of potential for business growth in our area that we're not capitalizing on. And I think, again, tourism is going to be our bread and butter in the future, especially if we can't do something to keep the mines here. And it's not being capitalized on to the extent that it should be. Thank you very much.
I guess the last 10 years before becoming a PUD commissioner, we had a lot of issues with our budget at that time. We were about $200,000 in the hole every year. And we had a choice with Kinross coming on. And so I think we need a 2 and a 5 and a 10-year plan. We need to really look for the future. We need to start planning ahead. Instead of fighting fires when they come, let's look to the future. I've interviewed about 60 businesses. My goal is to hit all the businesses in our area, and then later to hit Curlew and some of the other areas on the other side, and just to get feedback on what they think, how they're doing with their business, and what ideas they have. Because the people on the ground are the ones that feel it every day. They're the ones that pay taxes, the ones that, 24/7, their business. I think we both know that. We both run businesses. It's a tough deal, especially here. I do 200 different things. You name it, I do it. If somebody calls up, I say, well, I've probably done that, so I'll try it. So, bottom line, revenue in the county, on the county side of it, I've interviewed people. The feedback I'm getting is expand the jail. I brought in $350,000 last year. If we expanded it like Okanagan, we could potentially get $1 million into our budget, so the diversion of funds wouldn't be needed. But I think, we really need to look at our resources. That's been our foundation from day one. And we are the first time looking at not having that. So, thank you.
Can I get 1 minute? Yeah, I'll take it. Thank you. With the expanding area of retirement, with the baby boomers going into it, I think that the retirement community aspect, tourism, is going to be our bread and butter in this community. I've spoken to every business on Main Street in Republic, and the general consensus I get is that tourism is what fills their businesses up. One example would be Freckleface on the 4th of July. They didn't have an open seat in the house all day long, and there was not a single local in there. It was because people were coming here for tourism, to see our parks, to go to our lake, to go to Stone Rose, and we need to market that to its full potential and bring in more of those tourism dollars into our area. Thank you.
No cold ones, so you get 2 warm ones. Good deal.
Okay, Nathan first on this one. Do you support wilderness designation in Ferry County?
I answered that not too long ago on Facebook. And basically, my thought is similar to Joel's. I think the feds, basically west of Colorado, they own 80% of the land. East of Colorado, it's closer to 5%. So 80% is quite a bit. I would like local control, whether the county or state level. I think local control, local input. I don't think a representative from New Jersey should be dictating what we do with our land, because obviously with the bug issues, and this year, we got the pine beetle, I got spruce budworm, and they're wiping out all our trees again. I fought it 10 years ago and thought I had the bugs under control, but there's thousands of them now. So, and then the forest fire issue on top of that. You look at all the fires around us. I was here in '88 up on the pass. You couldn't see anything for 2 months because of the smoke, and nobody dealt with it. And so basically, I think local control. And so at this point, I probably wouldn't be in favor of that.
Well, this is a very polarized issue with a lot of heartfelt opinions in it. And as far as wilderness is concerned, it's only enacted by an act of Congress. It's a very permanent thing that cannot be reversed. The commissioners, the only interaction they have in wilderness is to work in coordination with the Forest Service and make recommendations for a congressional act. And due to that permanent nature and the fact that I have not had the opportunity to listen to all sides of the issue, I'm not ready to make an informed decision on that because I'm just not ready. I want to make a fair and impartial decision for the benefit of Ferry County, and I have not had the opportunity to hear all sides. So That's one that I'm not ready to decide on. I do see benefits either way, and I'm not ready to make a call on that. And even if I did, like I said, all I could do as a commissioner is work through coordination with the Forest Service to make a recommendation either way, and that's that. So, thank you.
All right, let's start with Leo. Do you believe Washington State should demand all federal lands be returned to the state in accordance with the Montana Enabling Act?
Right. Could you please state the question again?
Do you believe Washington State should demand all federal lands be returned to the state in accordance with the Montana Enabling Act?
Well, you know, what's right is right. You know, absolutely we should return the lands to the people they belong to. Absolutely, we should give them back to the Native Americans. Above and beyond that, the 10th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States delegates that all powers not delegated to the federal government are implicitly allowed to the states. The federal government owns those lands outright, and it's not going to be an easy route to take them back. I don't think that you know, it's a worthy fight. I think that we would be better off working in cooperation with the state and federal government to get the things that we need, rather than just you know, creating a situation that's just going to create tensions and make things difficult for the people of Ferry County.
Simple answer is yes. Basically, the federal government holds those lands in trust. They don't own them for the states. With the coordination, you know, basically the rules of governing and taking care of our forests, the Forest Service is supposed to work with us on that. They're supposed to coordinate with us. And they refuse to. They decide what they want, and the powers that be. And I fought the same thing when I worked at the sawmill. We got 2 days worth of logs per year off federal land. Does that make sense when, you know, 80% of our land in the county is either federal or state? And so the lawsuits, you know, and people know how to work the system to where they get their way, and we have no say about that because it goes to the court system. By the time it gets up, you know, the bid is finally okay, there's no value left in the lumber, or if it was a previous burn. So I think local control, I think it's a simple concept, you know? Do you want to control your house, your neighborhood, your life, you know, and what happens to your family? I think it's important.
Wait a minute. Okay. I'm not running for this position as a stepping stone to get into federal government. I'm running to help Ferry County. And I know that if I go into that position and just try to attack the federal government, it's just going to create hostility and make things worse. It's not that they are not cutting down trees in our forest. It's that they are cutting them down and they're putting them on ships and sending them to China and not milling them here. And that is the type of policy that is detrimental to the people of the entire United States. And even though I would love to be able to do something about that, I think that I would be better off staying to the local issues and just doing what I can to work with the federal government rather than fighting them.
All right. If and when Kinross leaves, how do you plan to help the county economically?
I've been trying to warn people about the reality, because it's going to be the first time we've ever not had a base economy. I mean, from the day one, from mining, logging, ranching, we've always had that base. People that could raise their families, go to school, you know, and live their life with a decent wage. We will not have that. You know, I'm not against tourism. I think it has its place. I think we need to focus where it makes sense. I think we truly need to analyze in the tourism of the real cost benefit. I mean, we need to know the real numbers that tourism brings in and what benefit it can be. However, I don't think we're going to become a Leavenworth. I don't think it will be our base. I think, you know, we're going to turn into a ghost town eventually if we don't have some big company of some kind that can actually produce living wage jobs.
Well, you know, again, we are a community that has a history of a natural resource economy. Of course, we would like to keep that here, but again, those are state and federal politics, and other than the coordination effort with the Forest Service, there's nothing in this position could do directly to change that. We could do the things we can do on the local level, like make this an attractive area for outside business that wants to create middle-class jobs that will support Ferry County and replace those $80,000 a year jobs that are leaving. You know, tourism is a big part of our community, our economy. It's going to be even bigger in the future. It's not marketed to its full potential. I'm on the city council. We dole out money every month so that we can subsidize the marketing of, you know, entities that bring in business to, bring in tourists into our businesses and create local jobs. And the county does, but not to the same proportion that the city does. And I think that's a travesty. I think that countywide there is so much here for tourist potential between a non-motorized rail trail and the lake and stone rows and so much that I can't even remember right now. But those are going to be staples of our economy, along with our efforts to keep our natural resource economy by working with the state and federal government, not fighting them and creating tensions and making things worse.
Case in point was just interviewing with people, the head of departments, businesses and stuff. An idea, you know, when Ken Ross leaves, we still need to use our resources. So some of the ideas I kind of put together with different aspects. One would be to create a sorting yard with logs. Logging truck comes in, it sorts it out. You could have 3 or 4 businesses in a central area. One of them, you could have a couple doing custom milling. You could have a pellet mill that takes the scraps and makes pellets. You could have a manufacturer for poles for the PUD that treats them, that, you know, and if you sort out the different types of wood and lumber, you could take all these entities, spread out the overhead, because individually each of these companies, there's not enough money, there's too much risk. But if they could come together, each utilize the space, and, you know, you might be able to get something, you know. Otherwise, without the tracks, you know, it's hard to get a big industry.
Thanks. All right. Last one. This one's a little long. Start with Leo. According to the county commissioners in Okanagan and Stevens County, outdoor motorized recreation has been a large help to their economies, to the extent that there are 7 different dealerships that sell and/or repair and stock parts for dirt bikes, snowmobiles, and ATVs in Stevens County, and 6 in Okanagan County, while Ferry County has 0. Do you feel that outdoor motorized recreation could help the economy of Ferry County? And if so, what ideas do you have that would help promote this effort, or are you satisfied with 0?
And first?
Yes.
Okay, so there is quite a bit of motorized use on county roads in this area. There's an effort out there right now to lower the speed limit on West Curly Lake Road so that there will be access for ATVs from that to all the county roads. I kind of feel like this question is directed towards the non-motorized rail trail. That I support because it's going to bring exponential tourist dollars to our community, because it's going to get linked up to Danville, wrapped around from Grand Forks to Laurier, brought back down the other side of the county, and be the first international rail trail system in the country. People who are wealthy come from all over to spend money and stay and play on these things: horseback riding, walking, riding bicycles. The potential for business growth off of it is endless. You know, from mom and pop bed and breakfast to horse rentals, to bicycle rentals, to various other types of rest stations. And I think that's going to be a big part of our economy in the future. But also back to ATVs, I think that we should have an outdoor ORV park in our area separate from that rail trail so that we can market both industries and bring people here to our community, and, you know, possibly have a dealership based off of that economy as well. There's a live and let live situation here. There's room for both, and I think that we should capitalize on both of these markets.
As I answered before, I think there's room for both. You know, in certain areas, I don't have an issue with that. I think there's been an awful lot of focus the last 5 or 6 years on this issue, and it's important to some, but I also realize the bigger scope of our economy. We have a lot of issues. As far as
and with our state representatives on the state level to keep that industry in the area. On the local level, we can work on tourism and the money that it brings in to our community and the jobs it creates and the expansion of our tax base it would create so that we can fund our agencies and be sure that we don't have to raise taxes and can keep our roads up. And I truly believe that that's just as important to the local economy as our natural resources. Because it's something that we immediately can work on the local level.
All right. That's all the questions we have for the commission. Thank you. Next, we have the prosecutor candidates. In this race, we do have all of our candidates here. We have James Von Sauer, C. Olivia Wood, and Emma Paulson. We'll start out over on the far end. What are the duties of the prosecuting attorney, and what qualifications do you have to fulfill these duties?
Well, the prosecuting attorney's duties are covered by more than 60 RCWs. And I'm sorry I can't name them off right away. However, I do happen to have one of the RCWs, which is RCW 3627020. And that RCW has 11 sections. And those 11 sections govern each aspect of the duties of the prosecuting attorney with respect to county agencies and county litigation. First and foremost, the prosecuting attorney must represent the county and the state and other county-related agencies in all criminal and, most importantly, civil actions. Now, I'm uniquely qualified to handle that aspect of the job because when I've had it before, I did have this job for 4 years, and 2 years when I was a deputy prosecutor, I did the civil side of the office. I also have over 32 years civil litigation experience in big city litigation, so I don't, I'm not ignorant of what needs to be done. More importantly than that is the right to represent the county in all appeals. I've got at least 25 appeals under my belt and am able to take care of that function. The other aspects are advising and contracts. I've got experience in that area. Of course, I did it before, but I do have contracting experience and other civil litigation experience. Thank you.
Olivia Wood here. In answer to the question, I would agree that the main duties of the prosecutor are statutory under the code that the good counselor mentions. And although most people know that a prosecutor prosecutes crime, they don't know about some of the less sexy stuff like making reports on those crimes and crime trends, child welfare and dependency statistics, victim statistics, and does advise the legislative body of the jurisdiction To speak directly to that, I can say that prior to coming here and prior to becoming an attorney, I was a policy analyst and a social justice advocate for almost 20 years. I have about 4 years additional undergraduate work in the specific areas of constitutional law, municipal law, and legislation. I spent an internship with the Oakland City Attorney's Office in their advisory division to do just that. And I've also brought cases pro se against the government having to do with ballot tax and welfare reform. My criminological or justice experience includes not only 5 years as an attorney doing criminal and family law assistance to the poorest of the poor here for about 2 years now, but also additional study in the theory of justice administration, in criminology, in white-collar crime, and thank you very much, and in addition to interdisciplinary studies. Thank you.
Well, the prosecutor's main job is to make sure that the community is safe. It is also to represent the county and all of its interrelated agencies. And that means being able to communicate well with everybody who is involved, and also be able to talk to each of those agencies and find out what it is that they need. I think I'm uniquely qualified to do that job. I have 10 years of criminal experience. I understand all of the issues that Ferry County is facing right now. I have done civil work, not as much as Mr. Von Sauer, but it has been relevant to cities and towns. I work for the Oklahoma County Prosecutor's Office. One of the things that wasn't mentioned here is that the prosecutor also has to be your coroner. So that means that when someone has an unintended death here, the prosecutor has to go out to the scene and try and determine cause of death and determine whether or not that needs to be investigated. That is an extremely important job. It is the difference between someone being caught and someone getting away with murder. The prosecutor's office is the highest law enforcement agency in this county. And that means that you have to have someone who's willing to pursue all of the crimes, to prosecute the law, and represent all of you and what you want. And I think I'm uniquely qualified to do that. Thank you.
Still have a minute for.
Thank you. I was a coroner for about 4 years. My first year as a coroner, my predecessor told me, "Oh, don't worry about it. We'll only have about 5 calls." I had 57 in the first 6 months. I know the coroner's job. I know about getting woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning on a day that you've got to go to court, to run out to Inchelium in view of the scene of a fatal accident, or go to Keller. It takes quite a bit of time. You end up working without any sleep. That one helicopter crash, I was there 6.5 hours waiting for the body to cool down before I could take it out. It's not a pretty job, but I've done it.
All right. Next question will start in the middle here. Speak to your responsibility in representing the county officials and giving them the legal support they need.
Well, I would just add to what I said earlier about experience dealing with different governmental entities. Before coming here, as I said, I was a social justice advocate and policy analyst, and so I did a lot of testimony before city councils and county councils and forwarded them recommendations both formally and informally on a number of subjects. And so I would continue to do that. As I said, my scholarly emphasis has been constitutional law as well as criminology and the justice system. And so I think I'm well prepared for that.
You have to be there. I don't know if you folks know this or if you've actually attended many county commissioner meetings or gone to many board meetings here, but you actually have to be there. That means that you attend all of the county commissioner meetings. You are there to offer them the advice. You make sure that you know what is going on in the county. If you don't do that, all of the knowledge and everything in the world isn't going to help you if you don't understand the issues that are going on. The county commissioners, all of the county electeds have to feel comfortable calling you day or night. And I have always made myself available, even as the deputy, and have acted in that capacity since I started working here and offering advice to the county commissioners and all of the elected offices and other offices, the housing authority, the joint fire district, all of them. And they all have my home number, they all have my cell, and I'm willing to be there day or night. And if I don't know the answer, because no one knows all of them, I know who to call to get it. So.
In representing county officials, that's sort of a two-part job. One is advice and counsel. The other is litigation. I have represented several county officials in litigation, and I certainly have given them advice. They have to come to you with advice before you can give them. You can't sit there and micromanage their job. They have their own elected responsibilities. If they have a problem, they should feel free to come to you and voice their problem.
Yes, just a quick one. Well, I'll restate that I've been doing that for almost 20 years, which preceded my lawyer work. But I wanted to say something about how you have to be there. Firstly, it's easier when it's your job to be there. But let's talk about being there. I'm the only candidate that actually lives and does not maintain any residence or office anywhere but Ferry County. I live in the middle of town and I'm always accessible. I'm accessible by any number of potential clients and the public. And so I think that voters should consider that a person who resides here and has dealt with the legal issues here is better able to speak on those issues.
All right, next question. Down here. How many civil cases, not family law, have you litigated?
3. One was a wrongful death claim where I was able to gain my client a $500,000 settlement because his father was killed. One was a jail tort where someone had been seriously injured in the jail. And the other one was a civil rights issue where an individual had been wrongfully incarcerated for a number of years and we were able to get him released. So, not a lot, but all of those were very high value, very high complex cases.
What was the question again?
How many civil cases, not family law, have you litigated?
Probably thousands. I was in the insurance defense business. We went through, let me just give you an example. One of the most costly and most difficult and time-consuming civil litigations involving psychological malpractice was the lawsuit against the cult for feeling therapy in Los Angeles. I was in that case every week, 4 days a week, for 4 years. The boxes were about 45 separate beacon boxes which just contained the case file pleadings. I've had over 3,000 depositions and I did civil law most of my life. I've got 25 years solid everyday experience in civil law.
I was trying to figure it out because general practice. So it includes criminal law, it includes garnishments, it includes parenting plans and wills and so forth. And so I was trying to think of, I would say out of the, say, 80 cases I've handled here, maybe 30% were in the, garnishment or other civil type arena. And the other thing also I'd like to mention though is that I don't just do full representation in litigation. I help pro se clients work out their paperwork so that they can conduct their litigation on their own. And so that number of cases is actually more than I mentioned. I would point out that I and a candidate that has the most variety of cases.
I thought the question was about litigating. Those are cases that I actually took to trial and won. So if we're talking about all of the cases that I've handled that are civil, I could say thousands, but I can say in the hundreds. I had a very successful law practice down in Okanagan. It was a general practice. I handled a number of civil cases as well as, I guess, the majority of my practice was criminal though, and extensively very high stakes criminal felony matters.
Okay, one more question, and we'll start down that end again. How many appeals have you handled, and how many have been overturned?
Well, I don't keep records on overturned, but I think, and I don't know what you mean by overturned. You could be on the plaintiff's side or on the defendant's side, and overturned, of course, is different for each meeting. However, I've handled well over 25 appeals to the point of an opinion. Most of those have been here in Ferry County. I've got a published opinion in California and a very complicated FIFRA case, which is a federal pesticide regulation issue. I've had 7 cases in the Courts of Appeal of California in about 20 years. You can go to my website at http www.jamesbondsalary, and I've got a list of all those cases. Appeals.
I was going to say. Oh, my opponents have me. I'm on my second appeal right now. But I would qualify that by saying that I actually brought a couple of cases forward and cases on behalf of litigants that didn't have the means to appeal, but I do think had merit. I would also add that as a candidate, I would have the utmost respect for the Constitution in bringing cases, and to me that leads to fewer successful appeals or overturnings, as well as a lot of savings in the administrative area of the courts. Thanks.
I probably handled over 40 appeals. I can't give you an exact number. Okanagan is a much busier court system than Ferry County. They have 200 felony filings, we have 60. So every person that is convicted, if you're doing your job as a prosecutor, they get an appeal of right, which means that you have to handle that, you have to respond to it. Every single person will do that. So I would say of those 40 or 50, 30 to 35 were successful, and I prevailed. I did have to retry a couple of cases in Okanagan, and I prevailed there, and those appeals did not turn out well for those defendants.
I suggest if you want to really ask about appellate experience, just run a little internet search, and some of the cases I've been on will pop up, and the other candidates, the cases that they were on will pop up also. Thank you.
That's all the questions we have. Joy Cole and Rochelle Rodak. We'll start with Joy on the first one. What makes you experienced to be treasurer? How do you plan to implement your knowledge to help our county?
Well, I have a county degree that I graduated from Scapa Valley back in 2007, including governmental accounting, 4 years as deputy clerk and clerk treasurer for the city of Republic. Pretty much trained myself on budgets and trained the mayor and the council on budgets, and read a lot of bars, lines, books. In implementing, the treasurer position actually has its own RCW, we call it RCW County Treasurer, but there's 180 funds in the county, including 5 school districts, some junior districts, and about $11,900,000 in investment funds. A lot of studying, checking out things, which I did before.
I recently finished courses in managerial and finance and accounting. While this is public accounting, it's vastly different from government accounting. There is many training before I would take office, if I were elected, that I can go to and get specific training on government accounting. I have dealt with the county funds as far as banking, which is different, but I am aware of all the warrants and all the different things that come through the treasurer's office. Mainly, I want to work with the team that's in place. Catherine has hired some people up there that know a lot, and I know that I can learn a lot from them. My experiences with the people and gaining their trust and being independent, I think will be a huge asset to the office.
Joy, you want to comment? Okay. Next question, we'll start with Michelle. If Ken Ross leaves the county, how will this affect the treasurer's office?
Ken Ross leaves the county is affected, period. Obviously, budgets will change, which I would have no control over. We would suffer, period. It would be working with the commissioners as best as I could in whatever capacity that I can work with them to set a budget that is workable for our county and just sticking to it and doing the best that we can.
Well, of course, it's going to affect the budget, which is going to be sad. You're going to have to pay attention to what kind of monies are coming in from federal and state taxes that we receive. There's going to be a lot of cuts, maybe employees cut, just obvious cuts that things we're going to have to do without. But that would be on the treasury side of it. There's other departments that have their own budgets, so you have to pay attention to that too. So, yeah, it's going to affect everybody.
All right. One more question, let's start with Joy. Tell us one improvement you plan on making in the treasurer's office after you take office.
Well, I think Kathleen's been doing a pretty good job, so I guess until you're up there and see what's going on and what you can change or improve. Updating, keep saying updated with the bars and the new laws and policies. Until you're up there, I do a lot of research and I do a lot of checking things out. The only thing I can say about that is just keep an eye on everything that's coming in.
This isn't so much an improvement at the treasurer's office, but what I want to see, and it may not be immediate because there's always processes when many of you were affected by the Washington Federal and Bank of America selling. Bank of America and the treasurer's office, because it was too much work to switch the banking, stayed with Bank of America. The closest Bank of America is in Spokane County. We do not benefit at the local level at all. On the other side of that, people that get checks, jury checks, they get released from jail and their funds are given to them and they are stuck in Republic because we rent out jail space. They cannot cash their checks in Republic, and I think that's wrong. They're given a check from Ferry County and they can't get their funds. They're stuck here. I want to see the banking back in the community. That funds our banks, that funds our jobs, and it ultimately benefits the entire county.
All right, that's all the questions we have for them. I think we can all thank these ladies for their brevity. Now, he's not able to be here, so Steve Van Slyke is going to read a brief statement from him.
Jim said, just a brief statement from Ray, who couldn't be here. Try to read it word for word, even though I don't want my glasses. Good work. If I have a problem, I'll get them.
All right.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank the Tea Party for hosting this event and giving us the opportunity to speak. Forums such as this exemplify our great system of selecting community leaders and public servants. I deeply regret not being present to share this experience with you, however duty calls. Last year, over 14 million of our tax dollars, which were allocated for 911, were swept from its fund. The primary beneficiary of that sweep was Washington State Military Department. These funds were restricted for the support of 911 and were initially saved to pay for the Next Gen project which did not launch as hoped for before the replacement of the 911 tax. 911 has an overly complicated contract funding system which resulted in many of these dollars being returned to the state, further increasing that fund. After the fund was swept, to help balance the state budget, the leadership at the state 911 department approached us and requesting we provide a new model of funding contracts, one that protects the integrity of the 911 mission while streamlining the contracts and granting flexibility to small counties trying to cope with rising cost of service. After several days and dozens of emails, we emerged with a new model which accomplished this task. Contract applications were issued by the state 911 office with increased funding to account for the new tax. Some counties have restructured their departments to accommodate for the modified funding and obligations. For us, this meant revamping the schedule to provide more shift coverage, negotiating with the union for removal of one position and the addition of others. It also required a new IT contract to be drafted for the increased services needed to support 911. This was all accomplished in time and was set to execute on July 1st. Coordinators around the state were given assurance that these contracts were supported by 911 fund and that they were awaiting approval to be sent to the counties. Midway through the first week of the contract period, all county coordinators received an email stating that operations contract counties such as Ferry would only be partially funded, but that the structure of those contracts would be as planned. Non-specific financial information was provided and the leadership at 911 was not available to answer questions. Since then, I've learned that while money exists to fund these contracts, the request to use that money may have been blocked. Tomorrow morning, I join with others to demand answers from the state office, and God willing, will return with the information we need to mitigate this potential loss. Ferry County can't support 911 on its own for long without a contract. So time is of the essence, and while I would rather be here with you, I will not forsake the duty I have for the one that I seek. Thank you, and may God bless you.
After the forum, we will also be giving these questions that these candidates are being asked to Steve to forward on to Ray, and hopefully he will be able to answer those questions at least on Facebook or whatever other avenues he chooses to. So he'll be getting these same questions. All right, we have, we go by Bill or William? Bill. Bill Campobasso, Tom Williams, and Brett Robertson. And we'll continue starting down at that end. What is your position on supporting Ferry County search and rescue, and what is the viability, and how do you plan to build on what President Sam Jenkins has done?
Well, the search and rescue is a good program.
Can't hear you. Can you speak up? Can't hear you.
Sorry. Okay. Shut up. Repeat the question now.
Yeah. What is your position on supporting Ferry County search and rescue, and what is the viability, and how you plan to build on what President Sam Jenkins has done?
The program for that is very good, because if we don't have it, we're very short-handed. And if we have the funds, we can do it. If we don't have the funds, we're right back where we started. And the Sam Jenkins thing, I haven't heard much about it, but that's about all I got to say about that.
Well, first off, I'd like to say that search and rescue is a real vital part of the Ferry County Sheriff's Office. I've worked with them several times on searches. They've always been there. You can call them, and you've always got somebody there when you don't have the manpower as far as deputies to go out and search for somebody that's lost or injured in the woods. I've always, ever since I've been here for over 20 years, been able to rely on search and rescue. Unfortunately, for reasons I probably shouldn't mention, is that search and rescue fell by the wayside. And here, probably 4 or 5 years ago, a big push came from my end and other officers' ends to get the search and rescue up and going again. And I think that what they did there in the Windy Bend should show just how important that the search and rescue is to Ferry County. and I will continue to support search and rescue, and I will continue to try to get them funding if I can. They need it, we need them, and I think Sam Jenkins has done a good job. I think he's got a good team with him, and I think that if we would ever lose search and rescue, it would be a great mistake.
In 1987, I joined Search and Rescue when I was up at Job Corps. We used to have 119 members. They are a very critical element of our ability to search not only for lost people that are alive, but also we've looked for evidence during crimes with them. We used to pull dope with them. I've been out on dope bureaus doing that. What Sam's been doing is he's been trying to give us a network of communications through shortwave radios. And it's going to be very, very beyond important that if we're going to have the ability to tell the federal government that we can take care of ourselves, we have to be able to show that we have that ability to do that. As your sheriff, we can have the setup like with the windstorm, where when FEMA might want to come in or some other agency wants to come in, if we can provide our own safety net, then we can ask for assistance, but we don't have them taking things over. So search and rescue is one of the big things on the plate for me to get back up to at least, we need at least 100 members. How we're going to do that is through community involvement, and that's one of the reasons why I'm where I am with that.
Good, you want? All right. So I'm going to start with Tom.
If elected, will you demand all federal agents check in with your office? Will you assign a deputy to accompany the agent to ensure citizens' constitutional rights are not violated?
You better believe it. The sheriff is hired elected by the people for the people, and it's his job to protect the people. If the federal government wants to come in and do something, they need to contact the sheriff before they do anything. I never have been a part of allowing the feds to come in and do as they wish. They're supposed to, in my eyes anyway, anytime they have an event going on here, they should be notifying the sheriff, because he's totally responsible for the people of the county. And he answers to the people of the county, he doesn't answer to the feds. So yes, I would want to know when they're in town doing anything that needs any kind of help, or any kind of business with the people. And furthermore, yes, if I couldn't do it, which I'm telling you now, if the feds were going somewhere, I would be the one that would go, and I would not assign it.
There are a number of templates that are out. So the answer to the question is yes. One of them is out of Wyoming. Another one is out of Utah, where certain sheriffs have basically, you have to declare it. And so that you write your declaration, and if you look on the CESPA website, you'll see that Sheriff Richard Mack, who's the guy that beat the Brady bill, he's been spearheading taking sovereignty back in our counties from the feds so that they don't do egregious Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment violations to us like they've been doing. So we need to have one that's a border county, because we need to work with Border Patrol, we need to work with Customs and Immigration. But at the same token, if they're going to come in and they're going to seize property, then they need to have done that correctly. They need to have their warrants in place, and I will take and have myself there, because you're hiring me or whoever you choose for sheriff to be your civil representative between you and law enforcement. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yes, I think all government offices, regardless who they are, they should come in and come straight to the sheriff, tell him what they're there for, look over their warrants, and you go out there and you escort them to that site. Because you don't know what they're going to do, so you have to go with them. so you make sure it's done right, so the county don't get in a lawsuit or whatever. And I agree with Tom here on everything he said also, because I've seen too many of these places over the years where, well, I thought he was going to do this, or I thought he was going to do that. To eliminate these I thoughts, you go with them. And it's nice to have all government agencies to work with the county.
The only thing I want to add is that the sheriff, again, has been elected by the people for the people. And if something like this were to go on, he needs to be involved in it, and he needs to know about it. He needs to be there, make sure everything is right. To pawn it off on somebody else or just ignore it is completely wrong. And if it isn't right, they're not going to do it. That's just how I look at it.
All right, next question is Brett. Along a similar line, if a Bundy situation occurs in Ferry County, how would you handle it? Where would you stand?
Bundy was a non-violent civil standing of property taking. Now, as far as where we would be with cattle, because the Bundy situation, for those of you that don't know, is basically a range war issue between a rancher and family that's been there for well over 100 years, and the federal government, and then you've got the environmental protection agency and wildlife, because of the tortoises. So we're not going to allow, I would not allow, the property of the owner, this would be the cattle, to be taken out of the county or taken out of his possession if they have their 4th, their 5th, and their 6th Amendment, which they apparently did not have. They did not have their warrant and their paperwork lined out correctly, which is why they fell back. And they've now got that in court, but that's because the sheriff stood tall. Well, the sheriff didn't, but the people did. And stood between the property owner having his property seized and killed and buried, and then put an end to it until they could resolve it in federal court. So that's the way I would see, as long as they've got their paperwork, then we're going to go out as the sheriff and we're going to have to deal with that accordingly. If they don't have their paperwork, then we're not going to allow them to seize anybody's property, we're not going to allow them to kill anybody's livestock, and we're not going to allow them to run anybody off their God-given rights of property and protection therefore.
Okay. Well, if they're gonna come in here and try those little incidents, the sheriff, he should go and investigate and make sure all paperwork is done right. If you don't have it done right, you're going to have problems. Property owner or whoever is going to push this situation. And if you can get it straight, and you also get the property owner to understand everything, it would go off supposedly pretty smooth so everybody understands what's going on. And you can probably make a headway that way much better instead of trying to have another department come in here and bully their way through it. So I think the sheriff should be there to make sure everything goes right.
Okay, I did a little bit of research on this. I apologize, I haven't read all the stuff on it yet. But what I have been able to Google and find out, this has been going on, from what I understand, Mr. Bundy was paying the government a lease, or BLM money on a lease. Then he quit paying the lease, but continued running his cattle. The problem I have with that is when that first happened, and keep in mind, this took 20 years from what, if I'm reading it right, it took 20 years up to the point that they took his cattle. So if he quit paying his lease, shame on him, but shame on BLM, because they had 20 years to notify the sheriff of the things that were going on, try to find a civil solution, and work through this thing. But when it came down to push come shove, and what I read was they actually went in there and started stirring up violence. My understanding is they tased his kid. They did a whole bunch of stuff, that family, that was completely wrong. And the sheriff, I'm sorry, but the sheriff should have been there to make sure that didn't happen. I don't know, like I said, I'm basing this on what I read on Google. Whether you can read believe everything you read on Google, who knows? But I Googled it, and that's what I got, and based on the information that I have read, that's the conclusion that I come up with. Here in Ferry County, no, it won't happen. I know that, number one, BLM here does communicate with Ferry County quite a bit whenever they have any kind of issues like that, and it's usually solved just real quick. So I would say that that wouldn't be a problem here, but if it did, I would stand behind the rancher.
So, the reason I said that the sheriff stood tall was that Sheriff Richard Mack of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association was the one that mustered up the law enforcement side and stood between. Okay, the sheriff of that's in Las Vegas didn't stand up for that. This falls in a takings category, very similar to when Fish and Wildlife was taking the water rights away from the Met Hound. If you guys remember when I was part of the Action League and when I was with the Republican Party, I testified in front of Olympia on numerous occasions with the whole takings and different stuff, and it was that stopping of the federal government with that is the same type of position that Bundy is in. He's been fighting this for quite a while, and it finally came to a level where he ended up having to stand his ground, which is like where Tom is saying, shame on the sheriff and shame on the BLM for not.
Okay, next one, we'll start with Bill. What is your priority for attacking the county drug problem which leads to theft?
Well, that's a pretty important thing because every now and then I'll sit on Main Street up there and I'll watch. And I've watched drug deals go down right on Main Street. And I'm not going to use any names or nothing, but I look around, I look for a city marshal, I don't see none. And that's part of their job. And it's also our job as county. And a lot of them I see, they get away with it because of some legal technical paperwork was not done correctly. We have to do the paperwork right or you lose your cases one by one. And myself, I won't tolerate it. If he's picked up for drugs, he stays there until he goes to trial. And if he gets convicted, then he goes and sits in jail or prison, whatever it is. Because I don't like it. I got involved with narcotics back in '67. I worked with the narcotics officers in Tacoma, Lieutenant Seymour and Radman. It turned out I was involved with the second to the biggest drug ring in the Northwest. We tracked the drugs out of Miami all the way up to through Republic, over to Interstate 5, back down to Tacoma. We averaged 200 cars a weekend. That was what we put up with. And myself and my wife, we had bodyguards 24/7.
Will you reiterate the question, please?
What is your priority for attacking the county drug problem which leads to theft?
Okay, first off, the county drug problem, we all know it's a major problem. The other problem that we have is that we don't have the funds to put an officer on there full time. However, there are, like I said on the last candidates night, I'm trying to manipulate the budget right now to where I can get an officer that can work with the task force and with the city to go after this drug problem. Currently, we have an officer that works as much as he can and helps the city with going after the drugs. And so far, they've been able to do pretty good. However, it's not outstanding, not like all of us would like to see. But kudos for the guys that are out there trying to do it. The second thing is that when we had the meth grant, we had an officer on there full-time, and we were out there, we were doing breakdowns. When the state cut the meth grant, then that put us into a major bind. The only other thing I can think of doing if I were to lose my funding, which I plan on doing anyway if I'm elected, is I think, and I've said it to my deputies, I think everybody, every officer out there should be somehow, some way, working drugs, either by providing intel to the guy that knows how to work it, or doing it himself. The thing is that it needs to be done, it needs to be worked, because as long as there's drugs out there, you are going to have thefts, you're going to have burglaries, and you will find that if we can get rid of the drugs, we can probably stop a lot of the burglaries and the thefts.
Drugs are everything. 90% of all crime that is peripheral is involving some form of narcotic. People steal from us so they can pay for their habits. It's the basics of that. If they're high, they're wrecking into us, they're deuced. They're, you know, the things, so everything that we do, if we fight drugs aggressively, it's a 2-for-1 thing. All of the standard crime that's going to be happening, we get intel that way. We used to work where all officers were briefed. We used to have a detective. I was part of that task force. When I was on city council, I knew that we had to be part of task force. The city was never part of task force. We found $2,000 so that we could join task force, and then we started putting Lawrence Spooner in when he was a city officer, because that is paramount. If I am the last guy standing, I will be fighting drugs, because that is where our crime is. The buck stops there, okay? Everything else that's going on in the sheriff's office has to revolve around that. When we were doing things aggressively, we used to take and work with the state patrol when they were doing their deuces. We would do patrol with them. We had Boone out there. We briefed. We let people know that we were looking for these vehicles. We were taking that intel. We have to work that aggressively, and it has to be done. The deputies need to be trained so that they're going to go out. They have to know that that is part of their job, and they have to be looking for that whole picture of what is going on. When we stand back and we take that and we share that and we work together as a team, we maximize. That's the only way that we're going to get ahead of this. And so, yes, we're fighting drugs. We will, at every cost, have a full-time drug officer.
You want to?
We can have all these things, extra people with the drug department working on the side of that as a regular deputy. But we also have to remember, we have to make the budget balanced. If you're out there shifting this one deputy over to go do drugs, and all of a sudden you find out you don't have no more money to go do the drugs because your budget ran out. So then you got to pull those guys back and just go back to regular duty. And it takes a lot of time to work these drug fields and whatever.
Tom, what does the constitutional sheriff mean to you?
Constitutional sheriff means he's supposed to do his job and defend the Constitution and the people. I'm sorry, that's just how it is with me. I don't think that a sheriff should be strictly constitutional, because there's other things. He needs to defend the Constitution, and he needs to defend the state constitution. He needs to protect the people. He needs to defend the weak, and he needs to, there's a whole bunch of things. So the way I look at it is that, yes, I think a sheriff is a constitutional sheriff, but period. But there are also other avenues that a sheriff has to do, and I think that all that combined, I guess to me, would be a constitutional sheriff, when you put everything together. It's the rights, and the people, and the laws. You got to make sure the laws don't violate the rights.
We take an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the state. And then there's the local laws that are created by ordinances. A constitutional sheriff seems to get a dirty name. I would like to believe that I'm a constitutional sheriff. What we're really talking about here is that the Bill of Rights gives us certain inalienable protections. Those protections are life, liberty, and property. Without one, you have no need for the other, okay? So, I mean, obviously if you're dead, then your property would just go somewhere else. But if they take your property away from you, then what is the purpose of what you went and did? You tried to build your property, you tried to work. You're supposed to also have your abilities to take and enjoy those properties. We have the Bill of Rights. We also have a state constitution. There are a lot of laws that are in conflict. So when the federal government comes in or the state government comes in and certain things are not in right, it is more apt for a constitutional sheriff to stand back and say, we need to get an opinion from a prosecutor, or we need to get this to where we're going to bump this to the state AG, or we're going to understand why Eric Holder is trying to come in here and shut something down. And it is the sheriff's responsibility to stand between you and protect your life, your liberty, and your property.
Yes, if the sheriff doesn't protect the Constitution, he may not protect nothing, because Constitution is up on top. If you don't protect it, you're not going to protect the people. That's all I'm going to say now.
The only thing I gotta say is that, probably the way I worded it probably did not come out right. In fact, I guarantee it didn't. But what I'm trying to say is, if you think about what I've said on other things, I think you understand that what I was trying to get at is that the oath that he talked about is something that I take serious. And in that says you will defend the Constitution, you also defend the state constitution, and you'll also support the laws as they see fit. So if that's what they consider, like, putting a moniker on something as a constitutional sheriff, and I guess that's in my opinion, but I guess that's how I am now, so.
Okay, last question, start with Brett. If you were given a directive to confiscate citizens' guns, what would you do?
No. One of the things that I do wish to do with what we refer to as commonly as ESAR is to bring back basically the citizen that is involved in ESAR. And one of the things that I wish to do also, because there's many roles to be played within search and rescue. One of them is that I wish for anybody that can actually get a concealed weapons permit to stand tall and to basically be posse, okay? And the reason being is that whenever we have another fire or we have a windstorm or something of that nature, we, the community, can come together, and if these people are already vetted and with a little bit of training, we can guarantee their safety. They can work with the deputies. We maximize our abilities there as far as the potential of having these people protecting our property and our livelihoods. If the federal government was to come in and take away your Second Amendment right, the Constitution's null and void. Okay? It is an inalienable right for you to defend yourself. I, as your sheriff, will basically make it to where by decree that you are not going to have your gun taken away, because the simple statement is that in Ferry County, which is the size of Rhode Island, with 5 guys, four guys and then the sergeant, there's no way that I can protect you. Okay? You need to have the ability to protect yourself. So there will never be gun confiscation in Ferry County if I'm your sheriff. Period. End of sentence.
Bill?
So I would really have to think about going out here and taking the people's rights away from them, because it's not right to have some upper government take your firearms away from you. That's about all I got to say about it.
The only thing I'm going to say about that is that it would be over my dead body. And that's all I could tell you, because nobody's going to take my guns and nobody's going to take anybody else's guns either.
I don't think I need the 1 minute on that, but where this stems from is the Small Arms Treaty that the UN is doing right now. And what they're trying to do is bring us into more of a global community. And one of the things that they are doing is they're trying to get us, which are the largest gun owners in the world, to take and give up our firearms. Now, I like the Switzerland method. Everybody has a machine gun in Switzerland. Everybody goes to the military and they are issued this. You can Google this, okay? There are people that have MG42s because their grandfather was issued that in World War II. We need to bring back our people, we need to secure our borders, and we need to issue weaponry so that people will not do anything. In Switzerland, there's no blue-collar crime. We will be out of a job if you all had a firearm and you were trained to use it correctly, because no one's breaking into your house to rape you or steal your property. It's just that simple, and that's where I stand on it.
All right, that concludes the candidates. How about a big hand for all of the candidates? Thank you so much for everybody putting up with the heat and sitting through this. Stan has something that he's going to say before we move.
have to change
You people are the ones that make us all Tea Partiers. You're all Tea Partiers, whether you know it or not. You really are. If you believe in God, you believe in the Constitution, you believe what the Founding Fathers did, make this country what it is, by you showing up here, you're a Tea Party too. The Sunshine Patriots didn't make it tonight. You guys did, came and sat through this heat. And I want to thank the candidates for coming up here and putting their name on the line to take a thankless job, underpaid, most of them are underpaid, thankless job to serve us. And ballots come out tomorrow. Encourage everybody you know to don't just throw them in the wastebasket. This election coming up is the most important election our country's ever seen. It's going to be really important. So you're all welcome to come to our Tea Party meetings. I got to put a plug in. First Tuesday every month, Northern End, 6 p.m. There's no official membership or nothing. You're an American, you're welcome. If you're not American, you're welcome. We'll teach you. There's literature out here from the candidates and stuff. Help yourself. There's Tea Party literature. There's sign up, Steve, if you want to sign up to have Tea Party information, email, stuff like that. And thank you guys for suffering through the heat. And thanks all the Tea Party committee people that worked hard to put this on. You guys